Welcome back, guys, to a brand new live stream on my channel. Today we will make it a quick 1 hour stream, going over why the market is dumping at the moment. Bitcoin is in free fall, as you guys can see. Bitcoin is normally a good indicator for how the stock market is going to behave tomorrow. So it's very likely we will see stocks dump further tomorrow, and Bitcoin is open 24 hours, so a lot of people are potentially selling. But the reason we are dumping is because of the death cross that is going to happen tomorrow. And we've had plenty of cases of death crosses. Sometimes we dump before the death cross and then rally after the death cross happens. And then there's times where the market doesn't go anywhere and then we dump into the death cross, which is basically what's happening now. I don't really think we'll go below this region right here. I don't think we'll go below the previous low. I think we're very likely to, maybe touch 78, 79K in the short term, have a bounce, and then maybe sometime later down the line, when or if the Bank of Japan raises their interest rates, then we could potentially visit the low 73 to 74K region in this area right here in my little box. Let me just move this up a little bit. In this region right here. So in the short term, what's happening is Bitcoin's having a death cross. We've seen this multiple times in the past. The last 2 to 3 times we've had a death cross in this cycle specifically, it marked the bottom every single time. So we had a death cross. Well, we had a death cross come in on August. We obviously dumped to 48 to 49K. And then when the death cross happened, we had another dump, but it was just a higher low around 52K. And then we went on to rally. We've had this before as well. We had a dump into this death cross as well, and then we just rallied. So death crosses are quite normal in the market. And like I said, the last 2 times, both times, it did mark the bottom, or at least the local bottom, before Bitcoin went higher. So, it's very likely we could see something like that again. But I do think at some point, I don't know when exactly, I can't give you a date, but we will visit the low 70s at some point, in my opinion. I do think that will happen. But, before that happens, I do think we'll have some sort of relief rally in the stock market. And that is because, we are starting to now price in more and more rate cuts. I think as it goes on, we have inflation coming on on the 10th of April. So if inflation numbers come down lower, which is predicted to come down lower, let me just show you guys so you guys know. Let me see what inflation number is. Hold on. Oh, right here. So on the 10th, on Thursday, we have inflation numbers. Inflation year over year is predicted to come in either 2.6 or 2.5. And this, how do we know this is going to happen? Well, it's because of trueflation. If you look at trueflation, is already below the 2% target, and it's in fact going deflationary. The pace that is coming down at, it's not healthy for the markets, because we could have a potential deflationary crash, which no one really wants. The markets does not like deflationary crashes. However, a deflationary crash is likely to mark a Fed pivot where they actually stop QT and potentially stop QE, because then rates can go down to zero and then they can start turning the printers back on. So it could be that the markets, or it could be that Powell or Trump wants that, but Trump has a very specific plan, and we'll go over the plan in a short while. But trueflation is coming down aggressively at 1.2%, which is very, very low, well below the Fed. This just shows how restrictive the Fed is being currently. And I do think after this data on Thursday, if inflation year over year comes below 2.8%, it will increase the chances of rate cuts. We are 100% going to get a rate cut in June, because that's more or less priced in. 60% think that we're going to get 25 basis points. However, there's a small percentage of 27 people thinking that we're going to potentially get a 50 basis point rate cut. Same thing for July, another rate cut in July as well. So the market is starting to slowly price in rate cuts, and this is very obvious through the bond market. You guys can see for yourselves, the 10-year has, is coming down rapidly. It has bounced back up, but it will most likely continue to go lower. The 3 years, the 2 years has also taken a massive shoe back to the downside. So the bonds are obviously telling us that the market is bidding up bond prices, and they are expecting more rate cuts. This is good for risk assets. The more rate cuts we get, obviously, we do get more relief rallies. We get a short-term bounce, and we could see that as early as May. I do think the chances of a rate cut in May is going to go higher than what it is now. I think it's currently 24, 25, 29%. I think this will change in the coming weeks. I do think we'll probably very likely get a rate cut in May, in my opinion. We do also have some other news in terms of the tariffs. So 50, according to the US government, 50 national economic councils, directors, whatever, says that more than 50 countries have reached out to the White House to begin trade negotiations. India was one of them, a few other countries, Israel is another one. All these countries are going to, I think this is a power move from Trump. He wants to obviously fix this trade deficit or this trade problem. The real problem is, has nothing to do with tariffs. What tariffs actually do to the US economy is the average person will now have to pay more taxes. So tariffs are another word for taxes. So, the average person now, or everyone in the US, will have to pay more taxes. That's basically as simple as you can put it. However, the real problem is, for the US economy is the debt ceiling or the debt itself. They run a $2 trillion deficit every single year. They need to bring that down, and they need to make more money, more than that 2 trillion, in order to pay back the debt. But the deficit is too high and it's going to continue to go higher. So they need 2 trillion to actually fund and keep the government running. That's what Doge is there to actually bring the deficit down, maybe bring it down by 1 trillion, maybe bring it down by 2 trillion. We don't know at the moment. No one knows how much they actually cut it. Maybe it could be even less. But the real problem is, these tariffs are going to tax the average person a lot more aggressively in the short term. That's as simple as you can put it. I do think, what Trump is trying to do is he's trying to cut from the government side, bring more investments into the country, which he's already doing. We've had hundreds of billions and trillions actually from these countries that are willing to invest in the US. So he's bringing money in from the private sector, which is going to increase GDP, because from the government side, he's cutting GDP. And what that does is it creates a growth scare in the economy, which is what we're seeing now. We're seeing GDP, a lot of economics or whatever you want to call them, they're predicting lower GDP because of these tariffs. And, when the GDP goes down, recession talks become more prominent. Everyone starts calling for a recession. However, if Trump can actually bring enough investments from the private sector, then it will increase GDP from one side, but also take it out from the deficit from the government, because most of GDP, or 25% of GDP, is from government spending. So if you're going to cut that, you're going to cut a lot of the stimulus in the market. And when that stimulus is cut, you see this, this massive drop in the stock market, because the stock market is ran through the government stimulus. And because Doge has been cutting that aggressively, you're seeing this massive drop in the stock market. Of course, the tariffs play a major role on these companies as well, because they have to shift a lot of stuff, maybe fire more people. We could see layoffs go up potentially, because the more tariffs or reciprocal tariffs we get from other countries, the more stress we get on these companies, and the higher chances of layoffs could potentially happen. So to counter that, Trump has to bring enough investment, enough companies back into America to counter what they're doing with Doge. So he's kind of playing with fire. It could play out, but what you get is this short-term contraction in the economy, which is what we're seeing now, and all risk assets take a shoe back to the downside, to take a nosedive, and that's exactly what we're seeing now in the market. So everything is kind of programmed to do what he's doing. So that's why I don't think we're going to enter some magic bear market, because all of this is done by design. Trump wants to bring the $2 trillion deficit down, but he also wants to refinance the debt. So the lower the interest rates are on the 10 years, the more money he will save refinancing that debt. He could save anywhere between 100, 200, 300, 400 trillion just by bringing the 10-year yield down. Once this goes down, the rate of borrowing goes down as well. So when the government wants to refinance the debt, they will pay less money. So all of this stuff is done by design. In terms of Bitcoin and how low it can go, my predictions are, I think what we're seeing is we're seeing something like this play out right here. So we had this major crash down over here going into the death cross. And then, we're probably potentially going to see another dump back down, maybe another higher low, maybe somewhere between 78K, 79K. And then it's very likely we're going to see a bounce at some point if inflation numbers go down. The market will then start pricing in rate cuts as early as May. At the moment, it's not. And, we will see a strong bounce across the board. And I said, Bitcoin is always it's like a pre indicator for the stock market. So as Bitcoin goes down, it's very, very likely we'll see the stock market do the exact same thing tomorrow on Monday. That's about it, pretty much. Let's go over the chat in terms of the macro side, the Bitcoin side, and what's kind of happening now. Bitcoin is experiencing a death cross right now, which is why we're seeing this dump. Sean, good to see you, buddy. Matt J, good to see you. Tony, good to see you. Country, good to see you. Jamie, Buzz, good to see you as well. BNB King, good to see you. 79K coming hot. I agree with you. I think it will. Do you see Rio still 500 million to 1 billion? I don't know why people still funding about tokenomics. Last time I checked, I don't think people are really funding anything about Rio now. I think the tokenomics are very, very clear. They have the new district side, which is coming out, and for every building or whatever people pay for or rent or whatever it is they're doing with the metaverse RWA bullshit they're doing, they burn a certain amount of real tokens. So I don't think the tokenomics are an issue because those tokenomics are going to be released in the space of 36 years. Some of us are not even going to be alive in 36 years. So the vesting schedule or the release is very, very slow. It's not rapid. It's not, aggressively. It's a slow release. The majority of the tokens for Rio is staked. Like 90% of the supply or the circulating supply is staked. So there's only 10% circulating. This is why you see price shift for Rio so aggressively. When the market goes down, those guys panic sell. The price goes down aggressively. However, when the market gets bullish, Rio is very fast to bounce as well. So it works both ways. But there's not really much problems with Rio tokenomics at all. Lavar, good to see you as well, brother. Every time Rio is used in land bank, 20%. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So every time land bank, 20% will be burned, reducing the supply over time. The remaining 80% will be securely held, creating scarcity that drives value. Exactly that, my friend. That's exactly what I wanted to explain. Thank you. Cook, good to see you as well, bro. Nice video on AUT. For those of you guys that have not watched my video on AUT, go over there, drop a like. The more likes it gets, the more you guys comment, the better it will be in the algorithms. The more average person, the more people will be aware of AUT. And I know every single one that watch me holds AUT. So the best thing you guys can do is share that video, like it, comment on it, because what that does is it pushes the video in the algorithms, and then more and more people can find out about AUT, and then that therefore the price goes up over time. So if anything, you're just helping your own bags. Rio solid. Yeah, look, the purpose of Rio, it's a layer 1 for RWA, which we don't really have many layer 1s for RWA, but it's supposed to be a platform, or is going to be a platform where the average person, if people like me and you, can go and tokenize anything you want. That's what Rio is trying to build with their new wallet that's coming out. I don't know when it's coming out, but it's going to be coming out at some point. But the wallet is a platform where me and you, anyone, can tokenize anything. You can go tokenize your phone. Someone can buy that, a percentage of your phone or whatever. It's just a platform for anyone to tokenize, which we don't really have. So you could think of Rio as maybe like the pump fund of RWA. And for that, that narrative alone could make it pump aggressively. We had the pump fund of AI, which was virtuals. We could get the exact same thing with the pump fund on RWA with Rio, because there's no other platform that allows people to tokenize anything they want. Rio is, the only thing that's actually building a platform for that specific use case. And I think that use case can gather a lot of hype. And besides that, Rio is always going to be one of the most shielded projects on Twitter. Every week or every day, Rio is amongst the top, projects being shielded. So there's a lot of KOLs that will shield it. So it's always by design going to pump aggressively when the market reverses. So it's a very good one to trade, in my opinion. In this market condition, FUDs gets the highest attention. Yeah, look, on Twitter, you're going to see people engagement from, and some people, unfortunately, people that don't understand the markets, they fall for that. So they see the influencer that they follow start posting bearish charts. That's not because he's actually bearish. It's just engagement farming. That's how you get more followers on Twitter. And followers, for Twitter people, play a massive role. The more followers you have, the more projects reach out to you, the more money you can potentially make. That's how it is. That's why a lot of these Twitter people engagement farm. People's not going to reach out to a guy that has 700 followers on Twitter. They're going to reach out for the guy that has 200k followers. They'll pay them to show their project. That's how it works. A lot of these Twitter guys. So don't fall for the engagement farming. Jobin, good to see you as well. Steve, good to see you. Bushman, good to see you. Cool guy, good to see you, my friend. Stay relentless, good to see you. What do I think about rivals? Let me see if this is the right rivals, because it looked like a decent project. Yeah, this is not a bad project for the market cap it has. The only thing I would say about this project that threw me off was the vesting schedule. It's not the best vesting schedule in the space, especially how the project is new. If you look at the vesting schedule, there's a potential that it could dump more, depending on these guys that hold 30% of the supplies, the early investors, they're going to start unlocking in a few months. So unless the market goes parabolic in the next couple of months, and if the market stays stagnant over the summer, you're going to see this project decline further, because once these guys get their tokens, they're just going to keep selling because their allocations are linear from that point on. So we'll have to check. I don't think it says it on here what the price is for those guys. So it's kind of hard to say if it's worth or not, because they don't have a price. We don't know if they're down on the investment. We don't know if they're up 5x. That's why it's better to double check that before you purchase this project. But it doesn't look like a bad project overall. It's a good AI agent coin. Yeah, I'm on my grind today. I'm on my grind, bro. I'm going to start releasing more videos, more lives, like short videos, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like the macro stuff that I just did at the start of this video. I will start doing those more regularly on video side, and then we can go live, and then maybe potentially go over community, people that watch me, their questions, or I think just like a Q&A type of thing. I think that would be good for the channel. Guns. Yeah, Guns had a decent pump recently. However, I would say Guns is not too bad overall. And the reason is because it dumped initially, and that was mainly because of the KOLs. They're obviously going to dump the token. Binance probably fucking bought a bunch, they sold. But the vesting schedule for this is not that harsh. For 6 months, you're not going to get C money unlocks. And then you see the majority of the unlocks after 1 year. So for me, this is not a bad project to get into. Maybe if it comes down to, I don't know, 0.45 or something, you can hold it. It's not a bad project. For the market cap, the vesting schedule isn't that bad. Let me see if I can show you guys what I'm talking about. The vesting schedule is not that bad for this project. Go to the vesting schedule. These guys, most of the early investors, so the liquidity pool, the KOLs, they got the tokens. I don't know why it says, they haven't, but most of the people will get their tokens sometime next year. So the vesting schedule isn't that bad. So it makes sense to hold this token for 1 year, and then after that year, you have to sell before the unlocks start. Because as soon as these unlocks begin, if the cycle even lasts that long, then you're going to see this price go down aggressively. But now it's not a bad time to buy, because there's no unlocks. Apart from this platform rewards, which is the game rewards, which is fine. That's not going to be that aggressive. Look how big the volume is. It will absorb that. That is nothing. So it's not a bad project. If you can catch it on dips, I don't think it's a bad project to add to your list, just based on the vesting schedule aspect. Good to see you, Crypto Kalush. Delario, good to see you as well. Everyone smash the like button. Injective almost at $7. What the fuck? 11% today. Damn. Hold on. I had the order on Injective. Let me double check. Did it get hit? Has it been hit? Oh, it has been hit. One thing that I always do personally is I put orders, a lot lower down, because sometimes those orders hit and we have strong bounces and you can make money off those bounces. So that's exactly what's happened now. Damn, the market is dropping aggressively. But yeah, put your orders a lot lower down. If you wicks and we wick back up, you can make easy 10, 15% on that investment. And then if you want to trade it, you can trade it. If you want to hold it, you can hold it. It makes no difference, but that's what I like to do. I like to hold. You know, a lot of these tokens are going to, you know, maybe aggressively sell off in the short term, but they're always going to bounce. I think the only tokens that always holds up, for me at least, for my portfolio, very strong is normally alt. Alt tends to hold up very well. Being good to see you as well, my friend. Ivan, good to see you. Andreas, good to see you. Ross, good to see you as well, bro. Hope I'm feeling good, bro. Hope you're having a good day as well. I've been looking into earning opportunities without success. Trading is hard, but buying and spot and holding, playing the long game, suggestion earning opportunities besides crypto from spot. If you're looking for other earning opportunities, you have to find a trade. You know, maybe get into something to do with AI. Maybe start a YouTube channel. I don't know. You can make, the thing is, the crypto YouTube, you don't really make much money from that, to be honest. I mean, you're gonna make the best thing to do is, the best way I've always found to make money in crypto is just to buy and hold. You know, a lot of people go and chase short-term gains, but what that does is it kind of builds, you know, like a casino mindset. So you will hold a token, you know, even if you put it into utility, for example, you hold a token, you'll see you not do nothing for a couple of weeks, and then you're gonna sell and then potentially go chase a meme coin. And that meme coin is like, you know, it's a 50-50 guess. You either go up or you know, you will die, but sometimes you go up, but then you won't sell, and then you wake up and it's down 90%. That's how quick these meme coins can move. So the best thing to do is, my friend, is, you know, if you're looking for other source of revenues, find a trade that you're good at and then stick to that. Or maybe just do, you know, you can make money off social media. Maybe just fucking do some AI stuff for sure. Social media. It's a good way to make money. Best trades, Real and Beam. Yeah, Beam is, I would say Real is a good trade in terms of actual trading, in terms of quick bounces. Real will 9 times out of 10 bounce aggressively when the market reverses. Beam is good, but Beam is not one of those that will bounce aggressively. I don't think it's one of those projects that will have a straight bounce. It had a nice bounce here, and I think most of that bounce was due to the Mavia, the power of the pump from Mavia. It kind of rubbed off on other gaming projects. So OTK had a good pump, Unity had a little pump, you know, Beam had a 2x pump, but you're not going to see that across Beam, you know, all the time regularly. You're only going to see that when something in gaming kicks off. So, for example, you know, this GTA official set to release in August 2025. So what that means is sometime around these regions, you know, and it will be the first game in the franchise to enable cryptocurrency payments, BTC, Sol, XRP count. That's crazy, right? So crypto gaming is not dead. It will make a comeback. And I think that as we get closer, and if the market is hot, as we get closer to this, you're going to see gaming projects start picking up in advance. Because what people like to do is people like to front run the market. That's why, you know, if we see people pricing in rate cuts as early as May, we will see a bounce in the next week or two because people like to price in advance. So, you know, if this is confirmed now, sometime close to August, sometime in July, a lot of the whales is going to mass accumulate a lot of these gaming coins, and then we could see a gaming coin as early as August. Maybe gaming will be the first narrative that really takes off, and then it could be something like AI and RWLS before we go into another, you know, a full-on bear market. So gaming is not completely dead. I think this will bring some life into gaming, and is the fact that it's coming out in like 4 months, 5 months. It's not that far away, so it gives you guys plenty of time to find and you know, very good gaming projects, because they will have strong bounces. Most gaming projects now are basically down the gutter. They're as good as dead. You're not gonna get these gaming coins, you know, any lower than what they are now. Yes, they will go. Some of them will go slightly lower if Bitcoin maybe goes down to the 73K region. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter if it goes down 10 to 15% when they pump 30 to 40x, does it? It doesn't matter. So keep your eyes out on gaming. I think this is going to definitely bring some life into gaming. Bitcoin has gone down below 90k now. Potentially see a bounce, very soon. Am I bullish on AI agents? Will it be big narrative or is it oversaturated? Not big fan of IXPT, Billy. Majority of those AI agents, like those, they're gonna die. Very few will survive. The ones that continue to develop will survive, but it's not saturated. You think it's saturated because a majority of AI agents launched, but if you look at them now, they're like meme coins. Most of them, 90% of them, has already died, and they're no longer active. They were good at that point when the narrative was hot. Once the narrative died, guess what happened? They just died down. And that's exactly what's happened to AI agents. There were AI agents when the narrative was hot, were just basically meme coins being launched. That's all there was. No utility, no product, nothing. It was just anything that had AI agents with the average website just went parabolic. Real $1 billion market cap. I don't know about $1 billion RP Tecto. How much allocation is all in my portfolio? It depends on your portfolio size. For me, it's like 4, 5%, 6%. It's quite a decent size of my portfolio. Twitter also pays people based on how much engagement they get, right? I don't know. I think you have to get a decent amount of views. They pay fuck all though. Twitter pays fuck all. I think if you get 1 million views, you probably make like a couple dollars. BTC below 80 real looks like it's the best trade. Yeah, I would agree with you. It's a good trade for when the market reverses. 2 trades that can go heavy on. My 2 I always go is either Su or Ondo. Those are the 2 that I always trade. Ondo and Su have, they hold up fairly well. And then at the same time, they bounce pretty well as well. Same thing with Su. Su goes down, I would say pretty aggressively. Sometimes it holds up really well, but it always bounces aggressively as well. So when the market reverses, these 2 are my favorites. These are the 2 I always trade. But I haven't really been on the streams recently. Been working buying blood loot, injective at these prices. Let's see. Injectives are cheap prices. Very cheap for injective. This is actually crazy. I didn't even think it was going to come this low, but 700 million. Why the fuck is nothing showing? Where's the data? But injective is very, very cheap right now. $7. This is another good one to trade as well. Mugen Trust, good to see you, bro. Fizz, good to see you as well. 728, that's insane. I think this is a phenomenal trade right now. These ones are phenomenal buys. Tim, good to see you as well. Thanks for answering my questions. No worries, bro. What's up? Good afternoon. Thank you for doing it. Ignore the haters. Let's do this dump going on so we resume onwards. I don't really have too many haters, bro. There was a guy that came on here a few weeks ago, and I think alt was around 4 cents then. He came here, he said, "Oh, alt's a scam," blah 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 blah. Ever since then, the fact that we've been holding so strong and the fact that we've pumped like 40%, since then, the guy disappears. This is what a lot of people do. They shit on a project once the whole market's down and that project is down, and then when everything pumps, they just disappear. They don't come back. That's what they do. So, people in crypto are retarded, as I call them. A lot of people in crypto are retarded. If they don't like a project or they bought the top, they fud their own bags and then they sell because they convince themselves through their own fudding that the project is terrible. And then we have a strong bounce. And then, then they convince themselves that this project is okay. It just had a strong bounce. Then they FOMO the top again. And then it goes down again. And they just continue to lose money. They a lot of people, this is what I always see at least. When everything's down, they don't want to buy. When everything bounces, then they ask, what projects can I buy today? It's like, motherfucker, the time to buy was yesterday when everything dumped 20, 30% lower. Now that it's 20 to 30% higher, you're asking me what project is good to buy. And it just, it never seems to amaze me how retail's mentality just never changes. They're scared to buy when it's red because they always think it's going to go lower. And, and then when it's green, everything looks nice, they'll buy. That's why I say, don't panic. All these people that's flooding right now, they will FOMO in at some point. It's very obvious. They will FOMO in at some point and they will pump your bags. as long as you're buying on the red days, not on the green days. So that's basically, the summary of the market. I do think Bitcoin may potentially whip down to about 78K, max. But I do think we have seen the bottom, the local bottom, at least in the short term. I think if the Bank of Japan, which is on the 15th of April or the 16th of April, I don't know the exact date, if they do decide to raise their rates, if the inflation numbers come in higher than the previous, then the chances of them actually raising their rates at the end of the month is going to go up significantly higher. Before that happens, what will happen is a lot of the smart investors, what they're going to do is they're going to sell in advance. Especially if the market bounces in the next week or two, they're going to sell their bags because they know the carry trade is going to unwind at the end of the month, if not a couple of days after the rates have actually been raised. What tends to happen is you get a carry trade unwinding. So the carry trade actually unwinded on the 30th of July. So the rates got raised on the 30th of July. And then on the 5th of August, that is when everything actually dumped. So you're not going to see the dump the next day, the day after. You see the dump a few days after, normally between 3 to 5 days after the rates have actually been changed. So, if we see the exact same thing play out again, if the inflation numbers go up higher than what it was previously, or if it's trending higher again, then the chances of the BOJ actually raising the rates is almost guaranteed, because that's what the banker guy said, the CEO, or not the CEO, sorry, the president said. If the rates inflation keeps going higher, we are going to have to raise rates. They did say previously that in an ideal situation, they don't want to be raising rates during a weakness in the markets. They like to do it when the market is green, but the market hasn't been green for a while, and that's why even if they do raise rates at the end of the month and the S&P hasn't bounced, you're gonna see it's gonna get very 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 ugly. That's all I can say. Fed is fucked. I don't think Fed is fucked. I think Fed is retarded because, like I said, if you look at trueflation is at 1% and is trending lower. A few weeks ago, this was 1.4. Now it's 1.2, which means it's putting higher lows and it keeps going lower and lower. At some point, this is going to go below 1%. And, it does not make sense why the Fed is being this restrictive, especially when trueflation is so low. If inflation numbers come in lower in 4 days to 2.5, forecast is 2.5 to 2.6, we're on that trend for inflation to go lower. So what that means is they have to cut rates as early as May. I think if they do not cut rates in May, then they want a crash. It's as simple as that. They want the crash to happen, because anyone that has even 2 brain cells will know that trueflation is down, unemployment is trending higher from 4.1 to 4.2%, and it could potentially go higher again because the IRS is supposedly going to get rid of 25% of their staff. So that's obviously going to contribute to higher unemployment because there's a lot of people working for them. And we know that people finding jobs is hard. So the average person can't find a job, but at the same time, layoffs are also low. But these tariffs, and this is why a lot of people call for recessions, is simple, because what these tariffs do, especially when China increases their taxes, it puts a lot of pressure on these companies, and then what that leads to is higher layoffs. If the average person can't find jobs, if they're finding it really hard to find jobs and layoffs go up, unemployment is just going to start flying up. And when unemployment flies up, the chances of a recession goes up significantly. If not, you're already in a recession. My thesis is that we've been in a rolling recession since 2022, but they've just lied to us and manipulated the average person or the public to think that we haven't seen a recession. We've already been in a recession. We've been in a rolling recession. They just keep lying about the numbers and then revising it later, and no one looks at them. Through that lying and manipulating the data, they've managed to keep this recession, behind closed doors for the past 3-4 years now. I think by the time they actually announce the recession, it is already done and is finished, and they're ready to actually come out of the recession. So in a month's time, if the president of the Fed comes out and says we're in a recession, it's already too late. The market's already priced it in months in advance. That's the time to buy. It was the time to buy was months ago, a whole month in advance. So when they do announce the recession, that's just for retail to panic sell one more time, and for the smart investors to fill their bags one last time before the Fed comes to the rescue, and then the QE starts, and then we start seeing some aggressive price actions on the upside. So let's see how it plays out, one step at a time. However, we are getting close to QT, end of QT. I think this current dump in the markets is going to force the Fed to at least end QT sometime in the summer, which means sometime in Q3 to Q4 we will get alt season, maybe at the end of the year. If you guys have to wait for the end of the year to make life-changing money, I'm sure you guys can fucking soldier it out for another couple of months. It doesn't really make a difference. It does not make a difference. You just get more time to purchase. The way I look at it is, most people don't think like this because everything is red. They think, oh, everything's just going to die. The way I look at it is, one extra grand in the markets today could be 30 to 40 grand 4 to 5 months down the line. That's how you should look at it. So you should be aiming to get more money in the markets because, like I said, the business cycle, everything plays out the same every time. The Fed will always come to the rescue. They're not going to default on the debt. They are going to come to the rescue. They are going to come to the easing process. And what Trump is doing is trying to bring the debt ceiling down so they can refinance the debt again. And all of this stuff is happening by design. That's why I'm not concerned in the short term, because it's all by design, like I said. Everyone's checking prices, CoinGecko servers, stock, low charts, and share data. Oh yeah, because I think was it CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko, one of them has apparently added the fucking minute chart or something. Stay on the vacation for that long. Might as well, because there's nothing to, unless you're buying regularly, there's not much you can do until then, to be honest. What about QT, QE? Yeah, I think that will come to the end in the summer. I'm out of money. You might have to get a second job, Ben. Might have to get a second job, bro. Which coins will retire you? I think alt will retire you. I think alt, if you guys haven't watched my video, go watch my video on alt I just made. Alt has massive potential to at least reach $1 billion in market cap, in my opinion. I think it has that potential. Whether it's going to do it or not, we don't know. No one knows. But the potential is there. And, no matter how bad the market gets, this is the one project that I always see non-stop develop, non-stop bring in more customers. The nodes keep growing. This is a very good project. Sensei is another one. No matter how bad the market gets, I always see Sensei continuously building. And it's one of those projects that holds up fairly well, considering the current market conditions. But I'm going CoinMarketCap. Why is this so dark? Is this normal to be this dark? Anyways. There we go. You keep accumulating or wait till you have to accumulate slowly. As I said, it's very, very slowly. You have to accumulate tiny amounts here and there, because even if you think the long term, if you buy $50 here and you buy $50 at a later stage, guess what happens? When the market pumps, it's not going to matter too much if you got in at that price, that specific price, or you got in a lot higher. It literally makes fuck all difference. So, for example, look at Mavia. If you've DCA'd Mavia from 20 cents, to, from 25 cents to 22 to 20 to 15, when it pumps to 70, do you really honestly care that much how much it went down? because he pumped 7x. So in the space of a couple of days, you can take out months of candle of bearish price action in literally a couple of days, in like a week. That's exactly what Mavia done. Looking at my fucking trade bags, bro. They're getting raped. Bitcoin's in free fall right now. We don't really, if we don't rally until Q4, we've seen gaming narrative pick up first. GTA, I think so. Yeah, I think that's a possibility. That's a high possibility. What do I think about Mavia now? Brought a little. Has Mavia dumped? Let's have a look. Yeah, I think Mavia is still a good project. It's down 15% today. Okay. Yeah, this is still a good project. Still a good project. Just wait for it to bottom out. This is one that's going to bounce aggressively now because everyone's got their eyes on it now. Everyone's got their eyes on Mavia because of that pump it did recently. More time to stack up, great. Lifetime opportunity changes life. Exactly. If you have a broader mindset and you do think 5 to 6 months down the line, the reality is a lot of people don't. And that's why very few people are rich and majority of people are not rich, is because everyone thinks on a 5 minutes time frame. They want everything the next week, the next month. If you just zoom out and understand how the market actually works, easing is around the corner. I do think QT will come to an end. QE is the last result, but we don't really need QE for a massive pump. We just need the end to QT. Once QT stops, more liquidity will get injected, whether it's through tax cuts, because this is what Trump's plan is. He wants to bring money from the tariffs and then later down the line, cut tax cuts or complete it. I think his thesis was to anyone that was earning under 150,000 will not get taxed. So that's very, very good. So I would say just accumulate slowly. A few projects that I really, really like. I don't really care about short-term price action too much, but even though they held up very well, Nye is one of those projects I like a lot. It has held up fairly well the last month, I would say. It's been stuck in the same kind of range. Sometimes it'll go up, sometimes it'll come down. But the overall picture for this project is very, very bullish. They are potentially, partnering up with some major Web2 companies. So contracts are ready. Now we're defining the scope of work. We'll try to get them on the space as well, fingers crossed. Meaning that these guys have some Web2 big companies. They are earning from the actual product. People are utilizing it in the Web2 and the Web3 space. Same thing with Sensei. Sensei is being utilized. They're generating income, or generates plenty of income. Look for projects that are self-sufficient, that don't rely on their tokens to keep the project going. A lot of projects, they sneakily sell 1,000 here, 2,000 here, 3,000 there. It's okay when the market's bullish and the volume's there. However, when the market is bearish and there's fuck all volume and you keep selling to keep funding the project, all that does is it just drags the price down slowly and slowly. And as the price goes lower, more and more people become bearish and more people start funding your project. That's what tends to happen. And what do I think about Plume? I actually like Plume. I think Plume is a phenomenal project. What about BTC price action? You think we'll see alts dump like December? You see a pump like December? I think we'll pump a lot bigger than December. December was not a major pump. Dominance. I think dominance did come down aggressively, but I think dominance will come down even more. That was if the power did not come out and ruin it, we would have already had an alt season by now. We would have had a very, very bullish 3 to 4 months. We could have made life-changing money. But with just one comment from Powell, that whole shit got crushed. That's what happened. We would have been in alt season. We probably would have been done with alt season by now. People would have been selling aggressively. Narratives would have been shifted. Literally at that point, that was what euphoria looked like with AI agents. Anything that was AI agents were pumping 5 to 10x in one day. That's what it is. And then what happens is, from AI agents, it shifts to another narrative. It will shift to gaming, for example. Maybe Mavia pumped 7x, and then everyone started focusing on gaming, and then the liquidity from AI agents would have went. Some of them will continue to pump if they continue to develop, but most of them the liquidity would have went into gaming, and then all the gaming coins would have pumped like that, and then it would have went to AI, some specific AI coins, and then RWA, and then layer ones, etc. That's how the market works. This is what I mean when sentiment shifts from one narrative to another. But you just need 3 to 4 months of no bullshit. That's all you need. As long as Bitcoin's in an uptrend and everyone is in a good mood, everyone's ready to buy, blah blah blah, FOMO. All you need is 3 to 4 months, and you can make life-changing money. That's all it takes. And I think we'll see that at some point this year. We will see that. Bitcoin is now at 78k. Dominance is at 63 and it's still climbing. We could see dominance wick off this, come down, and then potentially go. ETH is almost gone home. ETH has almost gone home. You guys can see for yourself. It's broken that long-term trend line and is now going to be going home. It could go as low as 1.5 to 1.4 to 1.3. Even 1.1 is on the cards. Even that low is on the cards. So, let's see how ETH behaves in the coming weeks. Ben Cowan always likes to say ETH goes home. I do think ETH will go home. And that's because dominance is likely to go higher. I mean, just look at the dominance chart. It just looks like it wants to go higher. It's very, very obvious. We could see some massive spike in dominance at some point. Maybe some major event happens. We don't know at the moment. But something like that could play out. But, the overall goal does not change. We are going to be bullish at some point, this year. So don't panic sell now because you're just panic selling the bottom. I do think a relief rally is coming, and that is because of the rate cuts. The rate cuts will give us a nice little relief rally. Maybe it'll last a week. Maybe it'll last 2 weeks. We don't know. But inflation is trending down. Unemployment is trending slightly higher, which indicates the Fed does not have any choice but to cut rates. If they don't, then they're just retarded. One of my previous lives, someone asked you about Geode, the robotics program. Do you research on it? What do you think? I think it's a good project. Geode actually got listed on Grayscale's good projects, something along those lines. So it's actually a good project. I don't know how much it dumped, but it's one of those projects that normally holds up well. So if you look at it, in the last 30 days, it's down 29%, but it doesn't really dump that much. The last time I looked at this, it was 25 cents. Now it's at 23 cents. So the chart looks phenomenal. This is the yearly chart. It came down to 13 cents. If you look at the max chart, I think this is one of the best charts in crypto. This looks like the BNB chart. Just slow climb up, dumps here and there. But the ultimate goal was it just went higher. But is this going to continue to go higher? With the trading volume that it has, I'm not too sure. I don't think it will. But I still think it's a good project. Rectum makes rich. No. What do I think about market dumps that is happening as we speak? I wonder what's happening. Well, just zoom out. Go back to the start of the video, of the live stream, and I explain why this dump is happening. Yeah, Neon is putting a lot of effort. Despite the price action, and I don't really like price action, looking at price. A lot of people look at price action and call the project a scam. It doesn't work like that. It all depends on sentiment and narrative, all that stuff. But Neon is doing good work. They have released a test version of their game. It looks like, just let it bottom out. If you can hold this region, then very likely the bottom is in for this project and it makes sense to buy it. But don't buy falling knives. Let it base out for like at least a month and then buy it. What's my prediction for AI tech and prop base? Yeah, so prop base is in my opinion, one of the best RWA coins in the space. It's been holding off really well recently. Look at that chart for the last month. That's a very good chart for 1 month. So I'm very bullish on this project. In terms of price action, I think this will do a 20 to 30x, in my opinion. 20 to 30x would put this at $200 to $300 million in market cap. Very, very doable. AI tech. I'm still bullish on AI tech despite the price action. And that's the reason is because, price action isn't everything. But, this price action hasn't been the best. I look at development because price action will catch up at some point. But this has just been in a crazy free fall. So unless it bases out, I'm not going to DCA into this. If something's just going to non-stop go down, you shouldn't just DCA every little drop. Just wait for it to base out for a month or like a couple of weeks at least, and then DCA. If you bought here thinking this was the bottom, this looked like good prices in the grand scheme of things. Yes, you had a bounce, but then ultimately it just went lower. So, what you want to do is when it bounces and it comes to retest this low again, if it holds, then you buy again. But if it just goes lower, that means it's just a falling knife. I'm not a fan of TARS AI, but I'm a big fan of Bricken. Bricken is one of those projects I've been bullish on for the past 3 years now. Ever since this came out, I've been bullish on it since 2023, these times. When it was just basing out here, I did an AMA with the CEO. And since then, I've been very bullish on this. I managed to get this very cheap, sold a lot of it up here somewhere in the RWA pump. Then I started reaccumulating again recently. So I am very bullish on Bricken. I think it'll do very well. TARS, I'm not a fan of. I've never been a fan of TARS. And the reason is I've explained it a million times, but it's very simple. I've seen projects like this previously in previous cycles or, even in this cycle. And what they do is they launch, they have a good launch, and then it kind of bases out for months. And then what these guys were doing during this period was they were just paying every single influencer in the market. They even reached out to me. I said, no, I'm okay. I don't want to talk about this project. I don't like it. And we had a nice rally. But what people don't realize is, all the money they spent here paying those influencers, they had to make that back in some way. And that was through selling the token all the way down here. Is common sense. I've seen this being done with PlaysApp. PlaysApp was the exact same thing. If you look at PlaysApp came out, it was just chilling. It was chilling, and then they started paying a bunch of influencers. This green candle was a buy alert. I actually got in before this green candle because a YouTuber was going to do a buy alert on this, so I made decent money on this. And then they started paying more influencers, and then guess what happened? Dump. And keep in mind, this was when the market was very bullish. The market was bullish till like late March. This just dumped, and then here they supposedly got hacked, dumped, and it's dead now. So I could see a very similar path. It could not happen, but it could happen. Possibility is high. Could see a similar path for TARS AI. And the reason I say that is because they've done scammy things. Like they think they made it out like they're partnering with Google, but all they done was just went to a Google event, used their tools, put an image of a bunch of them going to the event, and then put it on Twitter as if they're partnering with Google. It's complete bullshit. They haven't partnered with Google. Google doesn't know who they are. They're doing all this shady stuff. They scammed all the early investors in this project. So all the people that funded this project, they just scammed them. They could have made tens, 100, 30, 40x. The people that got in seed, private, whatever, all of those guys got scammed. Why do you think this project came up and just never got sold off? Have you seen a project that has unlocks where the investors are up hugely, after the initial pump? Have you ever seen it base out like this? I haven't seen it. And the reason it did base out is like this because there was no sellers. The sellers, got fucking scammed. And then it pumped, and then the team caused this dump. You think investors caused this dump? It was the team. All the money they spent paying all these influencers, about 90% of YouTubers, Why do you think every single YouTuber talks about it? It's not because they like the project, it's because they're getting paid. And then they had to make that money back some way, and it's by selling the token. And this is why I say projects that sell the token are never going to be self-sufficient, and they're never going to last. At some point, the people that held the token, they're going to get sick of this. They're going to fud it. They're going to be like, oh, some people bought here, some people bought here, and now that it's down here, they're just going to be fudding the shit out of this project, and it's going to ruin the project. So I'm not a fan of this one myself. Other people will probably like it, but I've given my reasons. Do your own research on this one. Yeah, dominance came down nicely. I hope little drops in dominance so I can sell and redirect my portfolio. That's a valid point. It could be extended, yes. It could be extended. The chances of the market extending goes up every day. Because if we experience the bear market now, then the chances, let's say we get QE or whatever, the chances of the market expanding for another year or another 6 to 8 months is very high. Very high. Anyways, guys, I only wanted to be live for a quick hour. So I appreciate all of you that came down. I will be live again, potentially tomorrow, if not the next day. So I appreciate all of you guys for coming down. Just for a quick, actually, let me see, is there more questions? Or back up to 78k. Yeah, we're probably gonna have a lot of bounces here and there, but hold on. Do I consider Tau to be a safety AI pick? Yes, I do consider Tau to be a safety AI pick. I think the next project you can look into deeply is Nai. Your videos on ore is of quality. Nai is the second best of the ore. Yeah, I'll do a deep dive into Nai, my friend. Market is crashing right now at 78k. We have 79k. We had a strong bounce. As I said at the start of the live stream, guys, we are going into a death cross every single time, if not a majority of the time. When we go into a death cross, I need to get the indicators on here so you guys can actually see the death cross. But I'm on the free version. I don't really use this too much, but I need to get the paid version so you guys can see the death cross. But every single time we've had the death cross, we've either dumped in advance or we've dumped straight after the death cross, and then a relief rally is coming after the death cross most of the time. So, this was a prime example, as I said at the start. Just go back to the start of the stream. I've explained to you guys why we are dumping currently. We're not going that low, my friend. Yes, I'm still bullish on Unity, indeed. I'm still bullish on Unity. Despite, if you look at a lot of the low cap gaming coins, just buy the ones that are still developing. These guys just partnered with, this is a tiny market cap. It's like a market cap. They've just partnered with what's that project called? Ice Network. So they've partnered with Ice Network. So they're still around. They're still developing. The game is ready. They will launch it at any time now. It's just that they'll launch it in the markets, right? So Unity is still active. I am still bullish on Unity. These guys are a very good project. I don't see them rugging. If they were going to rug, they would have already rugged by now, but they haven't rugged. So, I think this project will do very well. As a low cap gaming coin, this can do 100x very quickly. Chanda, good to see you, bro. Just buy Tau. What's Tau at now? I actually put an order for Tau for a trade. 88. I put an order at 160. If it comes down to 160 level, got a fat order there, but I hope it hits, and I doubt it will, though, because everyone's gonna front run it. Thoughts on Party? That doesn't sound gay. Let me have a look. Particle Network. This project is still alive. This is on the BNB coin. Let me see. One account, one balance, any chain, powering chain attraction, universal accounts, one project, blah, 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 risk assets, trade bridge. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these projects, bro. These get used, but in terms of price action, they're just not worth. Because the reality is These type of projects make money other ways. They make money through their DEX. They don't really care too much about the price of the token because they make most of the money through the DEX. So if a DEX is making 200 to 300K a day, they don't give a shit about the token that much in reality. Like for example, Uniswap. Why does Uniswap need a token? They make most of their money through the trading fees. That's a lot of these bridges and DEXs that make the money through the fees. They don't make it through the token. The token's just there for no reason, pretty much. I don't know why they had the token. It's like unless the token has a utility, it's fucking pointless. Why do you need to invest into Uniswap and PancakeSwap token? Because it doesn't benefit you in any regard. If you hold Uniswap, you don't get no discounts on Uniswap. You don't get fuck all. So it's retarded to hold it. Same thing with these type of projects. That these are the ones people use, and these projects make their money through the fees. But in terms of the token itself, it holds no value at all. Same thing with Uniswap and PancakeSwap. They can pump here and there, but it's just little pumps. Like when have you seen a DEX pump aggressively more than a 2 to 3x? I haven't seen it in years. Very few DEXs pump aggressively like that, unless they're micro caps. But something like a Uniswap or a PancakeSwap, it's fucking useless because there's no incentive to hold the token. If Uniswap came out and said, oh, those that purchase my token will get 10% discount fees. Guess what's going to happen? The price of this is going to surge aggressively. But they don't, because if they get 10% discounts, that's 10% less revenue. They don't give a shit about their token. It's just a cash cow for them. But anyways, guys, as I said 5 minutes ago, 1 hour live streams from now on. Sometimes we might extend it if something is happening. But just to summarize, Bitcoin is in a death cross. This is why we are dumping currently. I don't think we will go below this low. We will find out tomorrow. I think it's very unlikely. Some people are calling for a Black Monday where the stock market will go down an extra 20% from here. I don't think that's, I don't even think that's just a bit retarded in my opinion. It could happen. It's very unlikely. But like I said, normally the death cross marks the bottom for BTC. It has done the 2 previous times. And, why can it not do the same now? So, it's kind of, I would say there's about a 60% chance that this will be the bottom. Every death cross for the past 2 to 3 death crosses has marked the bottom. Very likely we could see that same thing now. For example, this was a prime example. Going into the death cross, we had this massive dump, and then after the death cross, we had the higher low, and then we went on to rally. And I do think the exact same thing is going to happen. It's very, very simple. And the reason is because the bond market is pricing in more rate cuts. This is why we're seeing this aggressive dump in the bond market. And I do think at some point this is going to continue to go lower. More and more rate cuts is going to get priced in. And, this is Trump's goal, to bring this as low as possible, maybe 3.5% or something. And then they can refinance the debt, save, a few $100 billion. And then we can move on from there. Maybe they'll stimulate from the private sector, whether it's from derelegating the banks, whether it's, mass tax cuts for the average person. It could be anyway. At the moment, they've done a massive tax hike. So from, these tariffs are going to tax people probably another, 10x what they were previously on specific items, or just in general, the tax is going to go up. But they're only doing this to pay off the deficit. The yearly deficit, they need to bring that down, and they're going to do it by cutting government spending, and they're going to, try to increase GDP from the private sector. That's basically his goal. And that's pretty much it for this live stream, guys. What good high caps token someone? I've already explained. Just rewatch the video, rewatch the live stream, my friend. Ondo and Sue are the ones that I buy for trades personally. Anyways, guys, appreciate you guys for coming down. Remember what I said, DCA slowly, but I do think a bounce is around the corner, and that is because of more rate cuts being priced in. We do have inflation numbers coming in on the 11th of April. I'm on the 10th of April on the Thursday of this week coming. So keep your eyes out for that. If this comes in positive, this is also going to spike. The chances of a rate cut in May is going to increase. And, keep your eyes out on the 15th of 16th of April when the Japanese inflation numbers come in, because if the inflation goes up one more time, then we could see a carry trade unwind at the end of the month. That's pretty much it, guys. Drop a like if you haven't already done so. Let's try to get to 100 likes at least. I'll see you guys in the next one. Appreciate all you guys. Thank you very much.